They circled the city a second time, and a third. The silence was heavier, more menacing than ever. My family and I watched from the window, huddled together. 4 times, 5, 6. The sun climbed higher. The soldiers on Jericho's walls had stopped jeering. Now they just watched in fearful confusion. The whole city seemed to be holding its breath. Then came the 7th lap. As they completed the circle, the army stopped. The priests raised their ram's horns. For a moment, there was a dead, perfect silence. Then came the sound. A long, piercing blast from the horns that seemed to tear through the air. It was followed by a roar, a colossal shout that erupted from the entire Israelite army. It was a shout of pure, earth-shaking faith. And then, the impossible happened. It started as a low rumble, a vibration deep in the earth. The floor beneath me began to shake violently. My family cried out, grabbing onto each other. The shaking grew, and a terrible grinding, groaning sound filled the air. It was the sound of stone giving way. I looked out the window and my breath caught in my throat. The mighty walls of Jericho, the impenetrable fortifications, were crumbling. Not in one spot, but everywhere. They were collapsing, folding in on themselves, dissolving into a massive cloud of dust and debris. Chaos erupted. The air was thick with dust, making it hard to see or breathe. The screams of the dying were swallowed by the deafening roar of the collapsing city. It was the end of the world. But in the middle of it all, I saw something even more impossible. My section of the wall, the part that held my house, was not falling. It shook, but it stood firm, as if an invisible hand was holding it in place while everything around it was annihilated. Through the dust, I could see Israelite soldiers pouring into the city, simply walking across the rubble. The judgment I had been promised was now a terrible reality. Yet here we were, my family and I, alive and safe inside our little room, protected not by stone, but by a promise and a scarlet cord that still fluttered bravely in the dust-choked wind. The walls of Jericho had fallen, but the faith of one woman, and the God who honored it, had stood. The noise of destruction finally faded, replaced by the grim sounds of the city being taken. We stayed huddled in my home, waiting. The fear was still there, but now it was mixed with a profound awe. We had been spared. The promise was kept. After what felt like forever, we heard footsteps and a clear call. Rahab, it wasn't the king's guard. I moved to the door, my hand shaking as I drew back the bar. Standing there, their faces smudged with dust, were the 2 spies. Salmon was there. They had come back for me. "It is time," Salmon said gently. "Gather your family." They led us out of my home, out from the small section of wall that remained impossibly intact. As we stepped into the devastation, the full scope of what happened hit us. Jericho was gone. The proud city was a heap of rubble and sorrow. The spies led us through the wreckage, a small, protected group moving through the judgment. They brought us out of the city to the edge of the Israelite camp. Here, we were set apart for a time, as was the custom for integrating outsiders. We were outsiders, but we were safe. Leaving the ruins of Jericho behind was like shedding an old skin. I was leaving behind the life of shame, the scorn, the name that had defined me for so long. I was walking away from the rubble of my past and into an unknown future. I was a foreigner, a Canaanite, a woman with a history, but I was also something new, a woman saved by faith. We were treated with kindness and honor. Joshua himself had given the command to save us, telling the spies, "Go and bring out the prostitute and all who belong to her, just as you swore to her." The leaders of Israel knew my story. They knew the conquest of their first city was aided by the faith of a woman inside its walls. In the days that followed, my family and I were formally brought into the community of Israel. We were no longer outcasts. We were part of the people of the God who had saved us. I, who had sold my body to survive, was now given a new identity. I, who had been defined by shame, was now defined by an act of faith that was already becoming a legend. The scarlet cord hadn't just saved my life. It had pulled me out of one life and woven me into another. My story didn't end when Jericho fell. Being saved from destruction was only the beginning of the new life God had for me. In a turn of events that no one, least of all me, could have ever predicted, my life of shame was completely rewritten into a legacy of honor. I, Rahab, the former prostitute of Jericho, was welcomed into Israel. In time, I married a leader from the tribe of Judah, a good and honorable man named Salmon. The whispers in the camp said he had been one of the 2 spies I had hidden all those nights ago. He saw past my history and saw the faith in my heart. We built a life together, a life I had never dared to dream of. And we had a son. We named him Boaz. My son Boaz grew into a man of great integrity, a respected leader in his own right. He would one day be known as a kinsman redeemer, and in another beautiful story of God's grace, Boaz would marry a Moabite woman named Ruth, who also chose to put her faith in the God of Israel. The lineage continued. Boaz and Ruth had a son named Obed. Obed had a son named Jesse, and Jesse had a son named David, who would become Israel's greatest king. Centuries would pass. The stories of Jericho and the scarlet cord would be told and retold, and then In the Gospel of Matthew, a genealogy would be recorded, a list of names tracing the earthly lineage of the promised Messiah. And there, listed among patriarchs and kings, is a most unlikely name, Rahab, my name. I wasn't just saved from Jericho, I was grafted into the very family tree of Jesus Christ. A Canaanite, a woman with a scandalous past. My story became a permanent testament that God's grace is bigger than our past. He isn't interested in our qualifications, but in our faith. He loves to choose the unlikely, the marginalized, and the broken to play a key role in his great plan. The author of Hebrews would later write of me, by faith a prostitute Rahab, because she welcomed the spies, did not perish with those who were disobedient. The Apostle James would use my actions as the ultimate example of a faith that works, a belief proven true by what it does. From a window in a doomed city wall to a place of honor in the lineage of the King of Kings, that is what God can do. My story isn't about the strength of a woman, but about the faithfulness of a God who hears the faintest whisper of belief, and can take a life defined by shame and transform it into a legacy of glory. The walls of Jericho fell, but the faith shown by a single scarlet cord echoes for eternity. The story of Rahab is a powerful reminder that no one is beyond the reach of God's grace. It doesn't matter what walls are around you or what labels society has put on you. Faith, even when it's born from rumors and acted on in desperation, can change everything. Do you believe that God wants to use you right in the middle of your mess? If this story has inspired you, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more stories of incredible faith from the Bible. Share this with someone who might need to hear a message of hope and redemption today. Thank you for watching.